them yet.
You haven't, okay. Anybody else have any additions, changes? You're okay?
I'm okay.
Okay, then I will ask for a motion to approve the June 6th Budget Workshop meeting minutes.
Motion to approve the June 6th
Okay,
budget meeting.
Jan, motion to approve. Nancy seconds it. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I think what we want to do, and I don't know without a quorum whether this makes a difference, but I think we want to have a motion to allow Bob and John and Ron to vote if we have any discussions. Now, we can't have any official business, but I think it would be a good idea to do that just in case. So, do I have a motion to,
I move that we allow them to participate.
Nancy makes a motion to allow them to participate.
Second.
Jan seconds it. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, you guys are all included now,
Okay.
all right? The minutes are approved. I'd like to go through some of these items pretty quickly because we've got quite a bit to cover. The financial update you received from Nancy, she's not here to answer any questions about it. And I don't think there's anything terribly out of line in that. Are there any questions or anything about the financials that Nancy sent us? They are through May only. Yeah, okay, if not, we'll move on. Also with us here, I should mention, is Sarah Mabry.
Phil, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Are we going to have a separate discussion and probable vote on the revised budget for 2018?
well, yeah, we are gonna have, no, what, a separate discussion? No, we're gonna discuss it today.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
because you were looking for a vote on the
The budget workshop.
budget. Oh, that's
Oh,
just the minutes you're talking about?
that's just the minutes.
Oh, okay.
That was just the minutes, and now that I think of it, we'll probably have to approve them again, because we don't have a quorum to approve them. So I should have skipped over that one. So, not hearing any questions or comments about the financial statements, I'd like to, and I mentioned that Sarah Mabry from Castle is here for the purpose of the minutes. So Sarah, are there anything other than budget stuff? Do you have any report or anything from the, okay?
Can I ask Sarah? a question?
Yeah, sure, by all means.
Sarah, what was the reason for all that dwelling live stuff that went on?
Oh,
Do you know?
Sarah, you want to come up to the mic?
My understanding is when they transferred it over, the barcodes are set to have some sort of expiration
Can't
date.
hear her.
Oh,
Can you hear me?
No, get it speak louder or into a different mic, I guess.
Is it on?
is it on?
Press
Is
the button down.
Hello?
The button should be up, actually.
Yeah.
I just tried it both ways, no?
No.
Can you, yeah, come over here.
Is it on?
Okay, now.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Ron, can you hear him now? Hear him?
No, I didn't hear that.
Nothing? You're not hearing me?
You're not hearing her at all? Oh, boy.
No, right now I hear nothing.
Sarah,
Ron,
why don't you,
can you hear me?
Have a seat. Just moving along.
We can hear now. Is that you, Nancy?
Yes.
Yeah, I heard you.
go ahead, Sarah.
Can you hear me okay, Ron?
There we go. Great.
Okay.
Okay, all right.
So the update for the dwelling live issue that happened, when we entered a barcode into the system, all of them require some sort of expiration date. It automatically puts like residents like 40 years out, and then we set them for other vendors or tenants. When the transfer went over to dwelling live, it misunderstood for whatever reason some of the expiration dates and set them to expire sooner, and more importantly, in this timeline that we're in now. We reached out to Dwelling Live, and that's been resolved. All the expiration dates are accurate now, or at least they will not be shutting off for the residents. But what happened was when residents signed up, they were signed up to receive notifications from Dwelling Live by clicking a box. And so Dwelling Live has an automated system where it was sending out notices saying your barcode's about to expire. It's a proactive attempt for the system, but worked against us because it shouldn't have had an expiration date in the transfer. So that's why those people got those notices. We've sent out an email communication a couple months back saying to ignore it. We're gonna send out a secondary one saying if you've got it again, to ignore it. Everything is fine on our end, and we've asked Dwelling Live to stop sending those notifications to the residents. So that's what happened with the Dwelling Live.
Okay, thank you, Sarah.
Thanks, Sarah. Okay, well, you might, Sarah, you might want to just hang in here. Because, get your stuff. Chris Shoemaker, just for the record, Chris Shoemaker from CDD staff just joined the meeting. Okay, the next item you'll see I have on the agenda is preserves wetlands ownership and maintenance. And I put that on there because I'd like someone to explain to me. I've seen all the emails, I've seen the explanations, and I'm not sure I understand yet who owns what and who's responsible for the maintenance of what. Is there somebody who can enlighten me?
I can give you my opinion.
Okay.
As best I can determine from the 2003 documents, the physical boardwalk and the adjoining bridges was transferred to Gateway, the ownership and maintenance responsibility. Having said that, that's the only thing that has been transferred. Everything that we were told before about the conservation areas coming to us and then going back is accurate. We have the paperwork that says that. Tony's got copies of it. And as of this time, we are not responsible for any preserve or conservation area maintenance. We are still trying to get the prices that WCI is paying. I've sent letters as recently as this week. They have been unable to tell us what they're paying, nor have they shared with us when they intend to transfer them to us.
Now, if I'm correct in my recollection, Sarah said, or Jason said at an earlier meeting, that some of those preserves were transferred to the Master Association last year.
You're right, and there are a couple, and I think they're all out at the Cypress Grove area. But Nancy, I have not run that one that rabbit in the hole. I just accept it for what it said. And if the Master's paying it, then certainly Sarah can tell us that.
Yes, there are two preserves in Matarita. One that we are responsible for maintaining, it's in the master budget.
Just another quick question on that one. When you accepted responsibility, did it have all of the sign-offs on it from South Florida Water Management and et cetera that we would look for on what came here? Do you know?
No.
It did not? You don't know, or did?
No, it did not.
Okay.
I think they just slid that one in, Nancy.
They just slid it in, and I stumbled upon it when I was looking up something else in LIPA and saw that the ownership was in the Pelican Master's name. I reached out to WCI. They said it had, in fact, been dedicated to the Master Association because it was part of a larger plot. And we had to have them remediate some sections of it, not to probably the degree that Bob probably would have, but to get the invasives out, and then now we're on a maintenance plan.
Okay.
And you're saying that's been done, Sarah? That they did go in and do work?
They did go in and do work when we first took them over last year, yes.
Was that work acceptable to South Florida Water Management, do you know?
I don't know.
So that's still a rabbit that has to be run down?
Correct.
Okay.
They did have it resurveyed, and they had it re-signed because it had grown out so much that it was actually encroaching on common areas that were part of the master that were not wetland conservation areas. So they did have to have it resurveyed when they did the work as well.
The reason I'm asking all of this is that South Florida Water Management was very, very, very particular about what needed to be done, and there had to be like a 5-year holding period before it could be turned over and all of that, so forth. So,
And didn't the 5-year holding period begin in 2011? That was my sense of it. That's when they, or from what I remember from some of the documentation, is when WCI took maintenance away, took it back, if you will.
That is correct.
Right?
That's my interpretation, Phil.
Yeah.
Well, I share Nancy's concerns, and I think we really need to get Tony's input on this, because as long as WCI Lennar is passing it to the HOA, that's them giving it to the right hand, to the left hand, and they're bypassing us and ending rounding us. And that is not a comfortable feeling to be in, because they've got nothing to lose. And there's no oversight like we provide. So we ought to have Tony formally tell him, don't do any more of that.
Okay.
That's my nickel's worth.
Yeah,
We ought to officially tell him that's unacceptable, it got biased, no more.
okay. Can you put that to Tony?
I can.
Okay. If you would,
No.
if you.
I will do that on
Yeah.
our behalf.
Okay, okay. Are there any other questions or issues on that? Now, we still have the problem, I should mention, of the Sienna Path, or the part of the preserve, the main preserve that belongs to Sienna. And that one, we are still trying to run down. Apparently, as I understand it, the WCI Lennar made a proposal there have been proposals going back and forth, by the way, this has been going on for 2 years, made a proposal to the board of Sienna for them to take some kind of control. I guess it would be a right-of-way of some kind. And the Sienna board has been fiddling around with it. Their lawyer has it, trying to work out what their response will be to this offer from WCI. But that piece of the thing still needs to be done as well.
That is correct.
Yeah.
And they're trying to squeeze WCI for sidewalks and a couple of more things.
Yes, right. And actually, WCI, I think, agreed to give them a sidewalk
They have.
at one point, and
Caldwell has agreed to that.
yeah. Unfortunately, they apparently have an attorney on their board who has been a kind of a nitpicker about this thing, and he's worried about ADA issues and stop signs and bumps and all sorts of things. But we will continue to pursue that to try and run it down. Bob, as you know, Lou Lemare, because he's on the board of Sienna,
Yep. He keeps me up to date.
yeah, and he keeps me up to date as well.
Yep.
So that,
It's moving at a glacial pace.
yes, that one still needs to be run down. We don't know, exactly where that is. So anyway, you at least, Bob, will get to Tony on this other
Yes.
thing.
Yep.
Okay. Any more questions on preserves, wetlands? Okay. I think we need to go over the budget. Ron, as you pointed out, we can't make any definitive decisions today, but I think we can get a consensus of the committee, or at least discuss it, and then if necessary, we can confirm it at our meeting on the 8th of August. And I think that would be in time, and in advance of that, we could give Stephen the numbers, so he would have them, and then we can confirm what we think we want to do in time for the finalization of the budget, which is on the 17th of August at the CDD's meeting. So that having been said, we need to dig into the numbers that Nancy gave us, and I hope everybody has a copy of that.
Hey, Phil, this is Rod.
Yeah.
You had indicated, I guess in an email, that you were going to try to get some answers as to what our surplus might be.
Yeah, and I think I put it in my report on the GSCDD meeting, and that is that, yes, we can use that surplus.
Do
And
we have an idea of how much it is?
it's huge.
Yeah, that's what I said, but
Yes.
it's huge, $1 million, or
No,
is it?
well, Nancy threw in a figure, and I haven't been able to confirm it, but as you saw in her note, she says, and I hesitate to put this out, but she says, our current balance sheet as prepared by Severn Trent shows $960,667 in the fixed asset reserve fund. We know about that one. And an additional $3,782,969 in unassigned funds. So we're talking about big numbers here. And
Yeah.
yeah, and my
So, do you feel comfortable in saying that we can use some of that 3.7 million?
well, I think what we need to determine, and which I must admit I didn't, yes, Stephen said we could use it. What I did not ask him, very foolishly, was how we use it. And my feeling is that the way we would use it probably is if we exceeded our budget on certain items, we could go to the board and request their approval of expending funds from the surplus in order to cover expenses that we can't cover. I think that's the way it would work. I need to.
Why can't we roll over that into one of the budget items?
When you say roll over,
Take part of that money and we vote on saying we want to take this amount into the 2018 budget item and reduce what our cost would be.
yeah, except I don't think we can take real bucks and roll them into a budget.
without a specific hook to
Exactly.
use them for.
I
Yeah,
didn't hear Nancy, without what?
Without a hook to use them for.
yeah.
Well, we would say what we're going to use them for.
Yeah, we'll say, like, I'll give you just one example. I mean, the first item on my list was, this is in, I guess, resident, we might as well talk about residence expense, the light pole replacement.
Yes.
And I think it's $25,000 in the FY18 budget.
Yeah.
And could we not say we want to use surplus money to pay for that?
Well, I think in that particular case, Ron, we may actually have, and I think the number is 30,750, is the total, because I think there's money up in the shared O&M expenses.
Well, yeah, it's in two different places.
It's in two
correct.
different
It's in
places.
the shared expense as well as the residence
Right,
expense.
right, and the number is 30,750. I believe we decided that, forgetting about our prior year's surplus, we probably would have enough in this year's budget to do the work.
Well, yeah, but I mean, if you can just, I mean, that's just one area. I mean, there's lots of other areas, like tree trimming and plant replacement. I mean, there's lots of areas that we could say, gee, we would like to use surplus to pay for whatever that might be for next year.
But those are recurring items that we need to be careful about, that, and every year those go up, that, we account for it this year, and then next time around, it's gone up another 3% or 4%, but it really comes out as 7 or 8%.
I like the idea that Ron has. I think if we could apply it towards some of the upkeep expenses that we've got, there's a lot of upkeep that needs to happen on Pelican Preserve Boulevard. Some of it's looking a little shabby.
Well, there's budgeted, there are things in the budget to cover some of that, are there not, is there not, Sarah?
Yeah, you're budgeting for your regular maintenance, your tree
Yes.
trimming, your annuals, your mulch, the contract, all that is in there. I would assume that the monies that you have in excess would be for, some capital, almost capital expenditures or one-time buys, like the light poles that you're discussing, or switching things to LED, or, I don't know that you could use it to offset maintenance.
Well, and my nickel's worth in all this is a budget, and that's what you think you're going to spend.
Right.
Right.
The actual expenditures are what you actually spend.
Exactly.
And if you overspend the budget, then you address it in time. I think it would be a big mistake to take surplus funds and use them in the budget, because then we're not truly spending and charging our residents what we think it takes to run the place in a year.
Well, but there are things like the light poles.
Yeah.
And there are things.
Absolutely, I agree with changing that. But as Sarah just said, that's a capital item, not a
Right.
year item.
I agree.
What about the 25,000 in here for bridge replacement?
It's probably gonna be more than that.
Oh, yes,
Oh,
and
yeah.
Way
it
more
may,
than that.
it may well be more than that, and I think that's one of the items that we could eliminate from the budget, and then if we need to, when we find out what we need to expend, we can take it out of the surplus.
I completely agree.
I like that idea. That's perfect.
Yeah.
Surplus or reserves, just make it a reserve.
Or we could,
choose.
we could take it out of the capital reserves if we
Yeah.
decide that that's
Either way.
appropriate. Yeah. I am concerned about, I mean, if you said, well, we could take, we could wipe out the entire budget for the year and it wouldn't cost anybody anything. But it seems to me, I'm in Bob's camp on this, that I think what we ought to do is we ought to set a budget that we think is reasonable for the year. And then if we have to overexpend it on some of these items, that we do it at that point. I'm concerned about, I think people ought to understand that our budget from year to year is gonna go up. They're gonna have to pay more because of all of the things that are coming down the road. And in fact, I made that point to the president's meeting this morning. I told them all that our expenses are gonna go up because of work that needs to be done on the ponds, and also the addition of Cypress Grove and the expenses related to the addition of Cypress Grove. So I don't think we should be in a position where people think, oh, well, we can do this all free of charge. I agree with Bob. I think we ought to have a budget, and then if we have extraordinary expenditures that we think we need to make, we go to the board and request their permission to do it.
Let me put my 2 cents in and I'll drop the subject. If we indeed have $3.7 million in surplus, I have a hard time voting for a budget that will result in a tax increase to our residents, especially when the difference is in the neighborhood of $113,000. That's it.
Well, Ron, you were the one that was advocating, we don't want to use the funds that way in one respect, because you were advocating a rainy day fund out of the surplus.
I'm thinking hurricane fund.
Yeah.
Well,
I
you don't have to
agree with
call
that
it.
entirely. Again, if the amount of money we're talking about is $3.7 million, we can easily create $1 million rainy day fund and still have a lot of money. I mean, I have a hard time going to another resident and say, your taxes are going up by 4 or 5%, or whatever the final turns out to be. And oh, by the way, we've got $2 million sitting in surplus. I just have a hard time with that until we specifically can tell them, here's the amount of money in surplus, and we have it earmarked this way. That makes sense to all of us.
Yeah, Ron, I'm sympathetic to your position in this. And I think the key to all of it is to understand what comprises that $3 million. Where do they come from? And does somebody have their fingers in it that it's future allocations?
I don't want it to go to
Okay.
Gateway. I want to go to Gateway.
What, John? Oh, I'm sorry.
We just got to understand where the $3 million came from. What is,
I agree,
what is there.
and unfortunately, Nancy left,
Yeah.
so
No, I understand. But I'm sympathetic to what Ron is saying. We shouldn't be taxing people if we've got that much extra. Somehow we have to figure out a way to, and it should be relatively easy, but it shouldn't be part of the budget process per se. It should be for capital items like the lights, like the boardwalk replacement, things like that.
So you would advocate having a budget that increases taxes then?
Yes, I would. But once I know what the $3 million is, I might be flexible. Well, here's what I'm saying is we can't lowball what the homeowners are paying if next year it's going to be there and we don't have a surplus to offset it. I don't in favor of that. I think they should be paying what their current expenses really are. But where the discretion comes in is in things like light pole replacement and the boardwalk replacement. That's where they shouldn't be part of the budget items. That's where the $3 million gets dropped down. But as long as we understand that. But right now I don't know where the $3 million comes from.
Yeah, well, that was the number that Nancy threw out.
I know. Yeah, I know.
Well,
But we have, double the lakes next year. The budget's going to go up. People got to pay for it. You're exactly correct. And it's misleading if we tell them it's not going to happen. And then 2 years from now, they really get slammed. I'd rather have there be incremental increases that can be justified and understood by everybody.
well, and
We have to know for sure if we have that much money.
Yeah. Yep, beginning,
To say, yes, Pelican Preserve has $3 million that are over, we haven't used.
Yeah, Ron, is there a possibility also that that the capital budget, we may have to bolster that?
yep,
Okay?
You think so?
yep. Oh, we know it's low.
Well, I'm saying
Reserve,
that
yeah.
maybe we do not have enough in reserves for capital expenditures.
And maybe the whole 3 million would go in there. I don't know.
Reserves.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't think we can make an intelligent decision until we have a clear understanding of the 3 million.
mhm.
My suggestion is that we take a look at the major items that we have here to deal with. If there are things like plant replacements and things like that, we use the excess of the 2017 budget to do that, because that's always going to be recurring. And we use,
They can't hear you.
They can't-
see you. They
I
can't hear
can
you.
barely hear Nancy.
oh, my microphone's on. Can you hear me better now?
I
No.
hear you just fine.
But you,
Keep going.
Okay, my suggestion was that we use the remainder of the 2017 funds to do things like plant replacements and that sort of thing that are recurring, that we can move into the current year's budget, and then take the capital items and take those out of the surplus. And a big ticket on that's going to be the replacing of the bridges and the boardwalk with some kind of decent material. And don't forget, when we're talking about having this pool of funds, that Bob and his group are doing a very good job with monitoring the ponds, but to date, they haven't been part of the reserve study. And there's always something that can happen with the ponds. Like, we've spent millions to date already to fix what were problems before. So I suggest that until we're turned over totally, and we know what's everywhere, that we don't want to be penny wise and pound foolish here.
Bob, let me ask you something that came up this morning at the president's meeting again, and I just want to make sure that I understand it. The work we're doing on the pond bank restoration, we are,
Yep.
for example, in Pond 27, I believe it is, that you just completed
Yep,
in Avila. We did it only on the side where the homes are.
that is correct. We have only done the pond sides where residents are. There's an area that is, now if it's a real safety hazard, we'll do it. But if it's the opposite side, like the Pelican Preserve Boulevard, that never sees or should not ever see people, we don't put money there.
And what happens if, can we have pond bank erosions in those areas?
We should not, because you don't have homes, feeding high currents of water into it. You just have normal rain.
But you have roadway.
And up to now, in the ponds that we have remediated and not done anything to, and they're principally golf course sides, we're okay with what's going on. It's 10 years from now, who knows? But right now, we seem to be okay.
Okay.
Hey, Bob, this is Ron. You can answer this now, or we can wait to your portion of the agenda. I assume you've noticed where the golf course folks are putting sand along the banks. I assume you've noticed that. Does that make sense to you from a pond management perspective?
Absolutely not, and I have not seen it, so I will make sure. I'm coming back next week, and I'll go and look at it. But that's the last thing in the world we want.
Yeah, I mean, at Heron 9, they've done it, and Egret 9, they've done it. Those are two that I specifically, you can see those from the road or from the driving range.
Yeah, since I'm not playing anymore due to my injuries and giving up my membership, I don't see that stuff. But I will call Torba and see what he's doing, and I'll look at it next week.
Great, thanks.
A suggestion, since we are kind of up in the air as to this surplus and its use and how we might use it. My suggestion would be that we perhaps, at this point, at this meeting, come up with maybe two alternate budgets. And we obviously have to get information by the next time we meet, and we might have to have a special meeting to decide how we proceed, but that we set a budget that doesn't take into account the surplus, and see what that looks like, and then we can then add the surplus in to reduce that to zero, I guess, if it can be done that way. I don't know at this point how else to proceed.
Well, that's the safest option, because set the budget, we can't go up, we can always go down.
Yes. That would be,
That's okay with me.
that would be my suggestion.
I'm fine with that.
So having said that, looking at Nancy's numbers, and we'll proceed with those and then work from there. One thing I wanted to point out to everybody, I think that her numbers have an error in them. If you look at irrigation electric, account 706514, if you have it in front of you, she came up with a total budget of $10,630, which would be a $6,215 reduction from this year, or from fiscal year 17, and I think that's an error, because if you add the two items she's got, the base budget and the Grove, that comes to over $25,000. There's about a $15,000 swing there. So
There's the balance sheet.
and so I think we need to understand that we're not working with to start with a negative 113. We're working with a negative about 128 or 29,000
Okay.
as a starting point.
I think some of that,
Yeah, we know what the balance sheet says, Bill. We just need to understand exactly what.
Oh, you sounded like you didn't know what the
Yeah.
balance sheet said. Okay.
Yeah.
yeah. Lakes and wetlands aren't on here, so I think some of that is lakes and wetlands.
Yeah. So, starting from that point, right now, the budget that Nancy provided to Stephen, which was about $3,000 higher than what you're looking at, resulted in, although it looks like an 8% or a 7% increase in total, it resulted in about a 6% increase per EAU for the older homes and an 8% increase for the newer homes. And I am not sure how the EAU thing gets calculated. Further, we don't have a final EAU count. But it does appear to me that if we were to go with this budget, we need to reduce it some, so that any increase, if indeed we have to increase it, is lessened.
Bill, why don't we have a formal EAU count?
Because it comes from the tax collector, and the tax collector has not generated a formal EAU count. He will within a week or so. So that's the reason we don't have it, John. Now, I think we can say that the EAU count of 3,097 or something that we have is probably, relatively close to what the real answer is, but we don't have it yet. There are 3,097.25 EAUs, but we don't have a final yet. My suggestion is that we reduce the items looking at Nancy's numbers, that we consider reducing the items we have some control over. Some of them are contractual stuff, and so there's not a heck of a lot we can do. But those items would be things like tree trimming, annuals, plant replacements, tree sod replacement,
What about one-time studies?
and one-time studies, yeah. The first thing I think we ought to undertake is to say we agree with the idea of getting rid of, or doing the street lighting, the street light project this year. As Nancy has suggested.
Yeah, the sooner the better, that's a money saver.
Yeah.
Sooner the better.
I think we ought to plan to do that. And so that is, the light pole replacements with LEDs are a total of about a little over $30,000. I think we ought to agree that we ought to take that out.
One other thing Sarah said the last time was that we have not planned yet for the light poles on Pelican Preserve, from Tree Line. Those still have to be done?
Right, yeah, those are the ones I think that are accounted for in the shared.
In the shared.
Okay.
That
so
20,000 should
That
include the tree
20,000.
line ones, and then the other ones should be the Cypress Grove ones.
Okay.
Okay. So I think we'd agree that that should come out, and we should be moving forward on getting bids and
Okay.
and on that one. So Sarah will move forward on that. The other,
Bill, so that means we'll use 2017 money?
yes, we'll use 2017 money for that.
Gotcha, very good.
Okay, so I think that's reasonable. You know, the other thing that Nancy suggested, which I think makes sense for us, is to take out the bridge replacement, because one way or another, I think we agree that that should come out of either the capital reserve fund or these surplus funds, one or the other. But we've certainly got the money to do that, and the 25,000 is such a swag that it seems to me it makes sense to take that one out.
It's also like half the
Wasn't there an
price.
email from someone that said that total cost was well over 100,000?
Could be as much as 151,000.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's why I
there's,
thought I saw that someplace, right.
yeah, they're 40
Yeah.
to 50 for each.
I have no
grant.
problem moving that out of the budget.
Yeah. Now, another question, Ron, of you would be, any idea what the capital, is that 25,000 we've got in for the capital assets